Good morning. Sun's just peeking up. Steers are fed. It's going to be a great day today. How many cows do you really need to make a living? That is going to be very, very different depending on your particular situation, your particular operation. But there's a few guidelines that I think you can follow. And I think that some of you will find when you really dive into the costs and really focus on those, you can make a living on less cattle than you really think. Now, the first thing that I mentioned was cost, and it's really because it all revolves around that. What type of operation do you have? What are the costs associated with that? And then how much can you profit? Well, you don't know how much you can profit until you know how much it's going to cost you to do what you're trying to do. Now, if you are a cow-calf guy, some examples of costs. You got your pasture rent, you might own pasture. Well, you have taxes, you have, how are they getting water? Do you have to pay for that in some extra way? Is there electricity bill with that? Vaccinations? Do you have hired labor, anything like that? Again, I'm just spitballing. There's so many other things that go into it. And make sure you're calculating everything. Like, once again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you want to make a living off of your ranch, then you need to calculate all those personal expenses out of your farm income. If you want to live off that income, all of that profit has to cover all of your personal expenses and all of the farm expenses. Whereas if you have a feedlot, or you, let's say you're doing something more in that realm of just feeding cattle or finishing them out, you're playing more of a margin game, I would call it, where, you're getting the cow and most of your cost revolves around the feed, how much food you can get into them. And then you might have some potential, depending on how you're doing it, some people are going to have more risk associated with potential death loss in that than others. The way I'm doing it with these 3 steers, it's slower. They're on pasture. It's not going to be nearly as threatening for that, though it can happen. You never know what can happen. The weather, things like that. That's always a risk when you have cattle. To know your type of operation and understand what the costs that are associated with that. And then once you know your costs, you know your break even, you basically can find out what you need to make per calf, per cow to make a living. Oh, one more, I wanted to talk a little bit about direct to consumer. So what are the extra costs with that? Well, it can completely change the way you're thinking of your operation if you're doing direct to consumer, because maybe you're paying for the processing, maybe you're paying for shipping, maybe you're paying for, dry ice boxes if you're doing that, maybe you're paying for a website, marketing. All of that stuff is a little more different than what you might typically think of as cost when you have cattle if you've never done direct consumer before. So direct consumer adds a whole different layer of costs, but I think the profit potential can be even higher per calf. In fact, I really strongly believe it can. And that brings me right into the next topic is your projected income per calf? What is your projected income per steer, per cow? What do you think you're going to make per animal? So if you're cow-calf only, what do you think that calf is going to make you every single, the cow's calf is going to make you every single year? So that way you know how many cows you need to make that income that wipes out all of those costs. So you know what your break even is, and now you know what your projected income is. So you know that if you were projected to make, $100 a calf, and you need to live on, let's say you need $2,000 a month. Well, you make $100 a calf, you need $2,000, that's 20 calves per month. Take that times 12. What's it give you? 240. Did I do that math right? It's a little early, so if I did that math wrong, I'm sorry. So that'd be, you need 240 head of cows. And that is assuming that everything goes perfect, and it's not going to go perfect. So I would always recommend you have like a 10-20%, not necessarily death loss, but some sort of buffer in there to where if it goes wrong 10-20%, you are still okay and you're not going bankrupt, right? So that is the minimum you'd have to make. And then I would suggest doing that 10-20%. Whereas you're doing direct consumer, you can figure maybe you're making $1,000 a calf. And if you've never done direct consumer, and you laugh when I say $1,000 per calf, like, no, it can happen. Trust me, it can happen. In fact, I think some people make even more than that. Now, there's a lot more that goes into it, and if you've never done it before, it's not as simple as going and selling a calf to your neighbor. That's different. If you live in cattle country, you're not going to make those type of numbers. If you live in cattle country and you're trying to sell to your neighbor, you probably aren't going to make those type of numbers. But you might not want to make those type of numbers with your neighbor. If you're trying to sell online in a different area, a bigger city, that's when you can start to make those type of numbers, because you're working with an audience who doesn't have this surplus of supply of cattle around them every single day. And you're doing the extra work to get that beef to them. And for that, you can charge more money because it's a more valuable service. Basically, once you know what your projected income per calf is, you can deduct out all of that break-even costs. Then you know how much you're making per animal, and that can help you understand how many animals you need to make a living on. Other things I'd recommend to make sure you're taking some risk off the table is, you can consider LRP, futures and options, hedging, and none of this is financial advice. I think that you need to go talk to a professional about it. If you want to ask questions about how those things kind of work, then joining Agri Summit would really be a great place, because I have education in there on those topics and how it kind of works, and it's only going to get better. Agri Summit's only going to get better, and anybody who's interested in that, go ahead and comment, shoot me a message. I'm more than willing to share a little bit more about Agri Summit, let you guys try it for free, but it's $15 a month. If you consider all these costs in ranching, like $15 a month to have access to a community of other actual real ranchers who care about their operation and care about making a profit, leaving a legacy, and making a generational family ranch operate from year after year. Like, if you have access to people and that knowledge, and you just gain that much more experience, $15 a month is nothing. Let me run you through a quick example of like how this would work for me. If I'm doing 3 steers and I predict that I can make $1,000 per steer, that means I'm making $3,000 on these steers. Okay, if that all operates exactly perfectly, that's fine. But if I wanted to do that as my full-time income and I wanted to make $50,000 per year, that would mean that I would need how many steers? That would mean I need 50 steers to sell direct consumer every single year, or heifers, or it also would change if I bought cows and then cabbed them out and that stuff. That would change. But I'm just calculating that if I bought these steer calves and then I sell them direct consumer. You should understand that one of the biggest things in ranching and in cattle is you always plan for things not to go as planned. And in business, I feel like that's true too. All the business advice, all the business experts, the people in business I've witnessed, they all kind of have this idea, like, if something goes wrong, it's going to be okay, and they're just going to pivot and they're going to make it work. But that being said, they also hedge their risk. They have other things in place, and they also test. Like, for me, 3 steers. I didn't go get a $100,000 line of credit at the bank and just start doing this, year one. And you might think that's crazy, but I work at a bank now as an ag lender, and I see a lot of people do that kind of stuff. It's throwing money at a business does not mean it's more likely to succeed. So if you have the ability to start small, take advantage of that. So guys, I hope that was helpful. If you have any other topics you want to learn about, want me to talk about on this channel, let me know in the comments. Let me, again, shoot me a message, hit that subscribe button. I've never really asked for that, but, trying to grow the channel, trying to really get more education, more information out there, helping, you know, family ranchers become more profitable, because I care about family operations. Just like my family operation, I want to see it succeed. I want it to see it succeed for generations. And, you know, the older I get, the more I care about that, and the more I want to see that succeed. I don't want to see any more pasture getting torn up that doesn't need to be torn up, because people think that they have to, you know, just rent it out to an investor because they can't make money in cattle, and just help pass on this living. You know, it's cattle are one of the last livestock industries that is still, you know, not let's say completely commercialized, to where, you know, I know you have the big packers, but at the end of the day, there's still small cattle herds out here, and there's you know, it's still not all feedlot industry. We're not putting up cattle barns all the time. I mean, some people are, but we're not putting up cattle barns like we are hog barns everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a part of living, and I'm not willing to let it die. So if that's important to you guys, I'd appreciate the subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.